Welcome to A Well-Designed Business with your host, Luann Nigara. Luann has a lifetime of experience building a multi-million-dollar business with her husband and cousin, and she knows the challenges you face in your interior design business. Luann brings you real-life answers to your most pressing problems, as well as practical strategies to explode your interior design business. So, let's get to the business of interior design.
My great thanks to my DOMA Studio, our podcast sponsor. What is my DOMA Studio? Well, you know, as busy interior designers, that running your own design firm isn't just about designing. That's what we talk about here all the time, right? There's managing contracts, clients, payments, products, and a million other things that you have to have locked down. It is challenging, but you must run your firm efficiently so you can do the fun, creative things you enjoy so much. And that's where my DOMA Studio comes in. I'd like to invite you to try my DOMA Studio today. Go to mydomastudio.com/a-well-designed-business. Designers around the world are using my DOMA Studio. What about you? Let my DOMA Studio help you organize the business side and spend more time on the designing side of your firm. I'd also like to share with you that Vin, Bill, and myself are so impressed with my DOMA Studio that we have invested in this company. So see for yourself what my DOMA Studio can do for your interior design business. And if you visit using the link mydomastudio.com/a-well-designed-business, you will receive a special offer just for you as listeners of the podcast. Hey, everybody. I am very happy and delighted to welcome you to our second Design Biz Live chat with Judith Neary. Hi, Judith.
Hi, how are you?
Good. And Corey Klassen. Hi, Corey.
Hi, Luann. How are you?
I'm great. So I'm just going to share with everybody that first of all, we all know that we put our first one up, I think, in July. And we had very valiantly decided that we would do this the third Wednesday of every month. And we were going to have this great Design Biz Live chat. And what you all need to know is that this is our fourth time trying to get it together. So we've had a combination of technical difficulties with Zoom, which, you know, I actually need to start a second podcast, which is just a rant podcast on all the things that make me crazy, technology and customer service. So I always allude to them here on this podcast, but I don't indulge myself with them. But anyway, so we've had our share of technical difficulties. And then actually, as challenging has been having this conversation about flat fees. We had said that we would do a series on flat fees, and we recorded one show, and then we all listened to it, and we were like, my God, that was all over the place. And then we recorded a second show, and it was good, and we liked it, but we kept referring to almost every other time I would ask you guys a question about flat fees. One of you would say, well, it sort of depends on your own personal skill set. It all depends on what you're good as an interior designer. And it depends on what your zone of genius is as an interior designer. And when I would ask you what that means, both Corey and Judith would explain to me that they have together developed a self-assessment on how for you as a principal, to really take apart all the different things that you do for your clients in the course of a project and break it out into the things that you're good at and the things that you're not good at, the things that you like to do, the things that you don't like to do. And so finally, after recording 2 more shows and having them say to me like 100 times, well, it depends on what you're good at. It depends. And I finally was like, all right, maybe we start with a self-assessment. How about that? So that's what we're going to do today. So Judith and Corey, look, we do a lot of shenanigans together, the three of us, but these two people are really smart people. Like, I know he's a nut. They're both nuts. And he snorts. And
Sorry. It's going to happen.
But the thing is, both Judith and Corey are industry leaders, and they have taken the time to develop this assessment among other things, and they share it with you as their peers. They do lots of speaking in front of you as their peers. Do you speak in front of spears too? I don't know.
It depends if they're shiny or made of diamonds or gold. Yeah.
So anyway, so all right. So you know that this show, I indulge a lot more of this craziness than I do in my regular show. But so let's get started. So you guys have developed a self-assessment for interior designers, which the sole purpose is to really very closely evaluate what the things that you are really good at and the things that you're really stinky at as it relates to your design firm. Because from this, both Judith and Corey recommend that you then skew the services that you provide to your clients in the things that you're good at. I mean, it's sort of pretty obvious, I want to say, but it takes people like this to put it in our face. And so, guys, so talk to us. I know that you have divided it into concept, execution, and administration. So who wants to start with a basic overview of this assessment, and then I'll start to ask you questions about it.
Well, I'll jump in there. Thank you, Corey.
Graciously bow.
You already anticipated that. Well, first of all, I need to say something. Luann, thank you for doing the podcast, taking on the topics that you do, interviewing the people that are out there in the industry, and asking the questions that you do. Because I have to tell you, in any career choice, oftentimes you get burned out. And I have to tell you, being a waitress in Barstow, California at a truck stop sometimes is really appealing.
Or a toll booth operator, right?
High five.
Right. And so listening to the people that you speak with, taking on the topics that you do, it's really refreshed my interest in the industry that I work in. So thank you for that.
That's so cool.
And then I also want to say thank you to Corey, because he dragged me down this path. A couple of years ago, we connected, and I said, I have this idea, and I have this idea for a class. And from where it started, because the original class that we used to do together was called Rent My Brain, Reduce the Pain, which is my tagline for my business. And in this process of this discovery and writing this material, we had to go down the path ourselves. And a lot of self-evaluation personally, professionally, and then applying it to our businesses. So it's one thing to listen to it, right? It's another thing to, you've heard this, walk your talk. Yeah. And so it has been very much of a challenge. So thank you both for this opportunity to share.
Thank you.
You're always welcome. Always.
So I got my stick out. In this process, and Luann, you mentioned to this self-evaluation, is, a couple years ago after this most recent depression, I decided, guess what? I'll suck it up and walk the talk.
I just want to clarify. You don't mean your personal depression. You mean the economic depression.
The economic
I'm just clarifying. I mean, we're in that zone here, so you never know what the hell we're talking about.
This is true. But the post-economic depression, a lot of us had to reinvent ourselves because the way that we used to do business didn't apply anymore. All the rules had changed. Opportunities that used to be there maybe weren't there. Homeowners wanted to do business differently. I mean, there's just been this incredible cultural shift in everything about our businesses. And in this process of trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do, more importantly, how I presented myself, really I had to go through a self-evaluation about what it is that I do best. And so Corey and I created this evaluation, and we break it down into 3 parts of the business: concepts, execution, and administration. And we borrowed a little bit from ASID, we borrowed a little bit from AIA, we borrowed a little bit from NKBA. We borrowed from everybody because guess what? It's out there.
That's right.
And we just simply formulated it into some very general categories, but then the evaluation came down to, I'm really good at this. I'll do it if I have to, and I just really don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
Could we just do that every day, all day with everything that comes up? That'd be awesome.
That would work.
No.
That would work.
Because no one would be winning at anything.
That wouldn't be being a grown-up, right?
Right. And I think, Judith, you bring up some really valid points, and I'd like to layer in a little bit more if I can. You spoke about this economic change, the change that happened. I just want to really identify that it was a U.S.-centric issue, but it ricocheted, so it kind of reverberated. Mm-hmm. So in my market, there wasn't really anything. I think it was maybe 3 weeks where it slowed down a little bit, where people were reading the news, and then they realized, oh, guess what? We're fine. So we just kept going.
That's just them down there.
Right. And I don't think in that aspect, what happened as a result was, because the U.S. is a leader in a lot of economic parts and pieces, especially when it comes to tech sector. That tech sector change has influenced how I do business as a service provider. We now have the threat of Amazon right with Whole Foods. So that's getting bigger. And then we have House, and people can purchase on House. But a lot of our shift locally is, how do you combat a lot of information that comes from another market that comes in where people believe that it applies? So we have to develop a system and a process, which we should qualify why we say process, right? A system and a process that helps align our skill sets to I'm going to say a word, and I really don't like saying it, as our ideal client. Which actually is my first point. I really want to be cautious about thinking about ideal client, because there is no such thing. There's no such thing. I'm just going to debunk that right now. You can talk about it all you want, but when it comes down, I know it's going to roll in her eyes. Oh my God! But ideal client.
I'm letting you have your space. I'm not stealing your thunder.
It doesn't exist. You can work with, as professionals, we can work with anybody in any facet, in any kind of space, as long as we understand what it is that we want to offer them. So it's not about seeking an ideal client. It's about us having a service that we're able to understand what we do. And I think that's a big gap. And I don't think anybody's really said that before.
Well, and I might debate it with you. I mean, it's not the topic of the podcast today, but
no.
We'll go there. I mean, for me, I'm not actually, strong arm debating it with you. I'm just going to push back a little bit. And I just actually feel like that there's truth in what you're saying. You're saying that as a professional, you could work with anybody. You are capable of working within all different facets. And what I would just say is that when you take the time to do various activities like your self-assessment that we're going to discuss, and other ways of really identifying when you're happy and what sort of client you are enjoying, I think it finds that ideal client. And maybe ideal client is too large of a catchword, and maybe, you know what I mean? So maybe so ideal client, I think we just use the term and we throw it around. But to me, I feel like that every time that you understand, because for instance, Corey, where I would push it back on is that perfect example is working with engineers. Like when I have an engineer, honestly, like even for window treatments, forget if I were an interior designer and I had to do all the layers of stuff that you guys have to do. But within 10 minutes, if I can't peg that a person's an engineer, like I'm sleeping during the presentation because I know it. And what happens is there have been times when, of course, like you said, I'm a professional, so I push through and I keep answering the questions and I step up my game a little bit and talk a little bit more in lingo instead of in ordinary speak, because engineers like that kind of lingo, yada, yada. But there will be a moment where I have in our career here, there will be a moment where I'll just say, I think we're going to reschedule this visit and I'm going to bring my partner Bill with me because Billy has an engineer brain. And I'm like, and you two can talk all day about where the brackets go and how high they go and what the brackets do. Because all I'm telling you is the thing is going to hang, okay? If you need to know how it's going to hang and what kind of molly and toggle we're going to use, then you need to talk to Billy. So I
agree.
That's not my ideal client. And so through your assessment, I would find that out.
So,
but I think that's more about salesmanship, right? So.
Okay. And I'm going to argue that designers are salespeople, and I'm trying to put that through everybody's head for the last year and a half.
You're right. They are. That you're a salesperson first.
That's right. It's exactly right. And understand where, to your whole point here, if you really get very clear on what you do really well,
it's going to happen.
That's right. And then, you weed out those people. Like now for me, WindowWorks, we're going to get 100 inquiries a month. Okay. So, and my interaction with that client is maybe 1 or 2 visits for probably 70% of them. So I am going to have to deal with tons of people that are not in my comfort zone because as a salesperson and as that short range sort of close sales process, that's going to happen. It's like going into, McDonald's and somebody saying, well, I'm only going to serve people with yellow hair. Like you can't do that. But as a designer, when you're going to literally, let's be real, get in bed with this customer for 6, 8 months, 2 years into a project, you want to be working with somebody that speaks your language, that you speak their language. And I really believe that your assessment is the tool that helps a designer first understand what their own language is, what their comfort place is, right?
Yes.
Am I wrong or right?
Yes. No,
okay.
You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
I like to be
totally right. Okay, we're done.
Okay, on to the self-assessment.
So, going back to the topic at hand, but Luann, you mentioned it, going back to the tool that we talked about and a self-assessment. So aligning your skill sets by identifying them and figuring out what you're good at, maybe what you're not so good at, and some of the things that you don't want to do, by being really clear about that then aligns you to your client. Okay, so that's just sort of an intuitive process that you need to go through to be able to move forward. The danger that designers have in the profession, and because there's all kinds of podcasts or information out there about fee structures and how you do this and how you do that, and when you do contracts and when you get paid and blah, 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 blah. Well, if you're going into a relationship with a client and you are not really clear with your own self about what it is that you want to do, you're gonna end up into a world of hurt.
Right.
Because you know what? I'm sorry, I don't want to pick carpet. Here's my rule about carpets. Fuzzy side up. Okay? Figure it out.
Okay.
But I can handle the other things. So part of my alignment to my value proposition or to my fee structure to a homeowner is deciding what it is that I'm good at and what it is that I'm going to do and how I'm going to do that.
Right.
Okay, so that's a core fundamental right there.
Right. And that's really what I just want to recap here from the introduction, that I made to right now is that's really what this conversation today between the three of us is focusing on. We are going to include the document with the full-blown self-assessment that Corey and Judith have developed in the show notes and on the website, so you can grab that for yourself. But the thing about it is the overarching theme of this little series here is flat fee versus hourly. And the premise here is that we can't even have that discussion with you until you have figured this out for yourself, what you're, like Judith said, she doesn't want to pick carpet. So, like, why would she have any fees or hourly or otherwise related to picking carpet? Because guess what? She decided she's not picking carpet. It's fuzzy side up, right?
It's like, shopping for a car. I want a blue car.
Yeah.
Whoa,
so, yeah, right.
There's like 100 of them.
Exactly. So we don't necessarily have to go through point by point, I don't think, on this self-assessment, but I think we can continue to explain the reasons why it's valuable and some of the things that maybe what you guys learned in doing it, which would be helpful in expressing the value of it to your colleagues listening, right?
Yes.
Sure.
So I'll talk about I'll talk about it first about a self-assessment, because when we initially crafted this this piece, I went through and I said, oh, I'm good at this. I really like doing this. I'm efficient at this. So by identifying the things that I was extremely efficient at, guess what? That had a lot of impact to my business because, one, I could do it efficiently. Two, I could charge for it. And then I can demonstrate the value to the homeowner in the project. Some of the things in this self-discovery, some of the things that I didn't want to do, okay, I needed to find or let's say, not that I didn't want to do them, I really don't want to do them, but the reality is that I may have to do them during a portion of a job. So I need to find a solution. Do I outsource it? Do I find a contractor that is willing to deal with blue tape and Post-it notes on a job site instead of, detailed drawings? So how do I fill in those gaps that maybe I'm not so good at, but I know that I need to offer as part of a general course of business? So that was a challenge. And then the other thing I'm going to say is, before I let Corey talk again, or let you talk again, Luann, is that I did the evaluation one day. A couple weeks later, after I was considering my job career options as a waitress in Barstow, California at a truck stop, I had a totally different set of skill sets. Okay.
Yeah.
That I was like, yeah, I could do this. Yeah, I could do that. So it is an evolution. You can't just do it once and say, this is what I'm going to do. Because you go through the process of self-assessment. Maybe you find opportunities to improve some skill sets that maybe you don't want to do. Maybe you don't want to do them because you don't know how to do them effectively. Mm. So it's an evolution. You can't just do it once and say, this is what I'm going to do. You have to look at it as identifying opportunities. How do you evolve your business? How do you refine your business? Because it is a living, breathing business that we're in. We can't just say, this is it. We're not McDonald's. We're not Starbucks. Right. You order from this menu and that's it.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I think that it's actually kind of a cautionary tale about pre-ordering something, because we always say that every job is different, every client is different, every house is different, every space is different, the lighting is different in every space, and that's why we design it. So it has to be unique to every situation. Now, Judith tends to be very successful with her business, and she works solo. I don't work solo. We have a certain kind of volume in the area that we have kind of ramped up to. Now I have got 3 different employees. So I had them do the assessment as well, and including myself. And then I graphed it together to find out what our averages were. And I think what we found was going through I'm really good at this, and then I'll do it if I have to, and then I don't want to do it. There wasn't a lot of I don't want to do it except for me.
Maybe they weren't really being truthful.
Well, and it's an interesting problem to run into, because as kind of like the leader or the principal, I have to look at it from a different aspect, saying, well, thanks for handing me your assessment back. I'm going to hand you one back where I think you're at. Right? It's a totally different kind of metric, if you will.
Right.
And it's really quite profound, because it allowed me to look at areas in my business where I said, I thought I was really good at something, and I went, ooh, we need to work on that. We need to tighten that up, and we need to tighten that up quickly. So it's actually a good process to go through, or I can say process if you want.
It'd be nice. We are in the U.S.
Right? Got to balance it all out.
2 of the 3 of us are.
Oh my gosh.
But it's to get to the point, it's a good process to get through, because it helps identify as a business owner what it is that you can kind of offer as skills or as services. And then even as a solo person, it allows you to say, hey, I've got development opportunities here. And that's what's really cool about it. So you can say, oh, I'm really crappy at lighting.
Right.
You can go take lighting classes.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys about, because Judith, you mentioned when you were talking about when in your evaluation of it, you found out that there were the point is that you said two things that I want to go back with, and one piggybacks on what Corey just said. The first thing that you found out was that when you were going through it, you realized that there were things that you were efficient at. Okay. And then of course, things that you were lacking, which was what Corey was just mentioning, finding that out. You can go and get development on it. So you can decide, hey, I need to, bone up on this. This is silly for me to keep looking at this, and really always knowing in the back of my mind and now putting it on black and white paper that I'm really not good at this. And, it's kind of a valuable skill and I should bone up on it. Right. But I'm more curious about, what did you learn when you identified the things that you were efficient at, whether they fell under the category of love to do them or will okay do them. But when you learn, so when a designer is out there and they do the assessment and they learn that there's a batch of tasks within that cross, I guess, through concepts, execution, and admin, that all you say, really, honestly, I'm really efficient at doing these. What does that tell you? Does that tell you that that's something that you would then maybe sort of table and start to think about would go into a flat fee structure if they all package together, because they're you're good and you're efficient, so therefore there's not a lot of risk that you're going to spin your wheels or get taken advantage of? Or am I missing something there?
How about I just say yes to that?
Okay. I mean,
yes.
Let me catch up on some of that.
Okay, well, all right. And I really did talk in a gosh darn circle. So yes, so here's the direct question. Here's what I'm thinking. It seems to me that if I were going to evaluate myself, and I were actually evaluating myself for the ultimate reason of trying to figure out if my firm should function with flat fees or hourly fees, if I come up with 10 items based on this assessment that I know that I just am efficient, I do it like the back of my hand, I don't struggle, I don't worry about it. If I could look at then further those 10 items and think, well, they all fall in concept, or they all fall in execution, or they all fall in admin, would that indicate to me that that might be a part of the project that I would be very safe as a designer developing and setting a flat fee for?
So I'll go back to yes.
Okay. So no matter how I ask it, it's yes.
No matter how you ask it, it's going to be yes. But let me paraphrase a little bit, or summarize. So Thank you very much for that, because my brain truly imploded. So in this process of self-evaluation, and I looked at all the skill sets that I could potentially perform in concepts, okay, that I'm good at, that I'm efficient at. And then through execution, and then through administration. From that, I crafted a menu of services. So here's my menu. I don't attach, initially I used to break it down. I think I would say to a homeowner, I think you're going to need 6 hours of conceptual design as part of my menu, and I would list 6 hours. Now I don't list the number of hours, okay? What I list is the skill sets that I can, or the services that I offer to them as part of the concept phase. Then I list the services that I would offer as part of the execution, and then part of administration phase of any project. So I just literally, I go through, I go, these are the things I think you're going to need me for, okay? And then I attach a fee to those three different phases of any project. I use a combination of a dartboard, Wheel of Fortune, an astrological chart. I check the weather report, and occasionally I'll look at my bank account just to see what I might need in there for the next month. Okay. So it's sort of this really random, bizarre process. But by identifying my skill sets, now I can break down and attach a fee to it. And I know that ultimately we're going to get into fee structures, but if by not knowing what it is I can do and packaging that menu, then there's just no way I can develop a fee structure.
Right. That's what you're saying. Right. Go ahead.
You're absolutely right. And that to take it to the next level with a proposal, where you're able to actually understand how the fee structures work, then it's actually quite interesting. So where there's the 3 steps, right? So there's concepts, execution, and administration. And we're actually able to, what Judith and I have actually been able to do with this is actually tailor our proposals in those specific phases. So everybody talks about these other phases, phase 1, phase 2. Yeah, there's traditional phases within the interior design industry that is kind of jargon or terminology that I would say is textbook case, but it doesn't actually apply to clients directly or how clients think and process. So by taking your concepts, execution, administration, and actually developing a proposal that matches those skills, you're able to segment the services that you're offering in 3 distinct phases or 3 distinct steps. So you don't have to kind of cross over into administration if you're just starting on the concepts phase. So what I have literally done is taken those phases and made that our process. And I've got a really good video on my own website where it explains how we do that.
Oh, cool.
And why we do that. So it's there to watch, and it's described below in text. But I think a lot of this is going to be, someone's going to come up and say, well, that's all great and fine and dandy, this menu of services, and we're talking about flat fee, but how do you control a client that goes off the rails? And every single time I'm going to say the same thing. It has to do with self-control. It's us controlling the process, not them controlling the process. So we have to be clear on what we will do, what we won't do for them, what the extra charges are if those things kind of go off the rails. So that's how you work in a controllable flat fee environment, taking on a process. But we can go into that later. But it starts with...
That's another podcast.
Yeah, right, it is. But it starts with formulating what you will do in what phases. So rather than saying, it's going to cost you $12,000 for your entire design. Oh, that's a lot for a client to... I keep hitting my computer, sorry. It's a lot for a client to absorb. But if you talk about these distinct skill sets broken into phases, it's a lot more tangible for you to explain as a part of your own sales process and what you will do where. So you're setting the client up for success, you're setting the project up for success, you're setting you up for success and the team up for success when you know what those things are right away.
To recap everything that we've been talking about and sort of bring some continuous conversation and thought processes to this is...
Can I just say, I think it's hysterical that he actually says process and you actually say process, but you each are saying it the opposite way for the other one. I just want to say.
I got nothing.
It's just another of your crazy quirks between you two, and I love it.
Oh, there's more.
Good. It's kind of scary. So, what? So, to recap and string together all these random topics.
Please do.
The self-evaluation of your skill sets will help you define the sandbox that you can function in. I love your zone of genius, okay? In that zone of genius, you need your own sandbox, because oftentimes when we get outside of our sandbox or we get out of our comfort zone, that's where we get in trouble. So before you can even talk about fee structures, be it a fixed fee, a flat fee, well, which is kind of the same thing, an hourly rate, a square foot rate, a percent of project, you have to identify what it is you're going to do. And designers professionally get themselves into big trouble with their clients, with projects, when they say, sure, I can do that, and then it's not in their wheelhouse or in their bandwidth to do that. So that's the first step. So before we can tackle those other topics, it's like, what is it that you're good at? Okay.
Right.
Are you fresh out of school and need to develop some skill sets? Are you like burned out like me? Okay. Barstow, California, here I come.
Here we come.
What if you're in the middle? Like,
yeah, or what if you're in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And so whether you're at the beginning stages and trying to figure everything out, or not that I'm at the ending stages, but I'm at a stage where I have to reevaluate truly what I want to do. Okay.
Right.
because of my tolerance, because patience is clearly not a virtue I possess anymore. So that's self-evaluation. Now, I'm gonna get Corey started on something, because when we started this, we were doing it on ourselves, and Corey handed it off to his employees.
Yes,
and I just want to come back to this topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agree.
And they had this perception of, I'm really good at this. Okay. And
it was amazing.
And then I'm like, Corey, I don't think so, because based on what you've told me, some of them aren't so good at that. So then he had to provide an evaluation. And so, Corey, I'm going to let you, we touched on this earlier, but I just wanted to help you come back to this, because it was a very self-realizing moment as a business owner to mentor his team along.
An important opportunity for mentoring your team, right?
It was, yeah, it was a success-driven moment where I looked at this information I was, handed back. I'm like, okay, great, thank you. I went about my day, didn't read it.
No, that was nighttime with wine reading, right?
Right. I shouldn't have done that, because I was like throwing wine everywhere. And anyway,
red penning all the way through, like
I took out my instructor marker and
that is not true. You are not that good at that.
Exactly. So, no, not really. It was a softer approach. So what I did was I graphed the results in a spreadsheet, which spit out a chart, right? So it gauged us. And then I went, okay, I read every single line, and I evaluated whether you had a 1, 2, or 3 in a column, because I kind of rejigged it a little bit, so you get a little bit of a kind of a rubric instead of a I like to do it or don't like to do it. Okay. So the result was something that was half of what I was handed back. Half. So I looked at every single area again, and then I presented that. I said, okay, remember when we did this? And this is what you handed to me. This is where I think you are. We need to talk about this, because it's very different. It's very different. In one aspect, some areas were really, really strong. So we were really, really good on the execution part. The concepts, right? We could have been better. Like site measuring. Oh, totally pick that one right out. Boom. Yeah. I need a process. Then we got to the administration phase, and where as you're administering a contract, it's something like, I'm like, I don't want to do it anymore. And I realized, oh my goodness, this is something I have to do as the business owner, because I need to change the result. I need to change the outcome, because it wasn't being fair or equitable or balanced in any way. And that really had a lot to do with the client experience at the end of it. So what we came up with was a new strategy of how we're going to layer in and build and figure out what our professional development opportunities were, and who's going to take what courses where, and what am I going to do, and how am I going to give feedback and coaching as the owner or as the leader to be able to strengthen the team and become this really amazing, awesome group. So I looked at it totally differently.
I love it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's such a valuable tool, like you said, so that, because so often that's one of the more difficult parts of being in our own business when we have employees, is when people have an unrealistic view of their skill set and their talents. And it gets to be very hard. I've had to do it more times that I'm happy about, where you to sit down with somebody and say, sweetie, you're not so good at this. You got to get better at it. Or, what can I do to help you get better at it? And even if you have the most compassion and your goal is to help that employee, it's still a difficult conversation to have. And it takes many times of having it where you develop your own space of really, to me, what a turning point for me was when I started to apply. Every time there was an issue with an employee, I started to apply the question, am I interested in rehabilitating this employee, or am I interested in having this employee leave my firm? And once I really knew what my goal is, it's just like everything else you do. What's your why? Why are you doing this? It's the question you ask when you do a Facebook Live. What's my goal with this? It's your question when you put a piece of marketing material out into the world. What's my goal? And so I was like, oh yeah, well, what's my goal with this? And so once I understood if I was interested in rehabilitating an employee, then it was like talking to one of my kids. Not that you take the conversation to that casual level, but it reminded me of 1,000 conversations that I had with my kids where I needed to share with them something that I wasn't happy about, share with something that I wasn't pleased by the way they were conducting themselves. But at the end, I wanted them to feel empowered and feel stronger and feel better about themselves, right? Yep. And then there's a whole different approach when you want the employee to leave. It's like, you're really not performing. You still do it with love and respect and everything else, but it's not as teachable. Do you know what I mean? It's
and documented coaching conversations are different than coaching conversations where you're, and I took this, like, I used to work for Starbucks. I'm sorry. I was a classroom learning coach. I was the guy that you came in when you first got hired. I was the guy at the front of the room where I taught you everything you needed to know about Starbucks.
How to be a barista.
Right. And one of the key techniques that I took away from that was show, tell, do feedback. Those are the steps. You go show them, tell. And that this has to do with whether you want to change the behavior or you want to teach a new behavior.
Right.
So show them, you tell them, you let them do it, and then you give them feedback. And it's a cycle. It's not a one-time thing.
Right.
It's not a one-time thing.
It
takes about 6 or 7 steps. Exactly.
I know, we went off topic again.
God almighty. Okay. As a sole proprietor, it's pretty hard to write myself up for poor performance evaluation.
Okay. But we did say something before that we will bring back to the solo proprietors out there. Okay. Is as much as an employee can have an unrealistic evaluation of themselves, guess what? We could be guilty of that too, right, Judith? We could.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have an unrealistic evaluation of myself. I'm pretty guaranteed I got that.
No, but I mean, we're joking, but it's serious. It might be something that you maybe have a trusted designer bestie, or you have maybe a colleague, a vendor. I don't know, maybe it's a parent or a kid or a partner that you could just say, would you really? I remember, I'm going to reference Sandra Fung for the 9,000th time in a year and a half of my podcast, but I remember that I don't know, how many years into our relationship working together, she actually sent me a survey. And she said, I'm really taking stock and I'm evaluating myself as a business owner and as an interior designer and all this other stuff. And would you take the time to answer these questions of your impression of me as a business person? And she said, and going forward, I'm going to use this to develop my strengths and to work on my weaknesses. And so here I was, her window treatment person. So the point is, if you are a solo, don't hesitate to reach out to somebody's opinion that you respect, that you think will take the time to do it, and ask them to look at your evaluation that you've done of yourself and say if they agree. It could even be could it even be a client that you've worked with closely that there's sort of a fuzzy line that they could actually evaluate your performance as a designer looking back on their project, or is that like crazy pants?
No, actually, I think it's really valid. And at the same time, maybe we have a trusted client that we can go back to and say, how did my fee structure work for you in this project? And, was it valuable? Did it align to what your expectations were? Because oftentimes we don't ask for feedback from our clients.
Right. I don't know. I've referenced this multiple times on the show because it really struck me as so valuable. But Susan Brunstrom, in the first 6 or 7 months of the podcast, she said that part of her process, she's in the Chicago area. She has an amazing is it Sweet Pea Design, I want to say it's called, but Susan Brunstrom, if you Google her and her business or that podcast episode, she was so smart and so actionable about running her project as a process. And she said the last and final step is that she takes every single client out to lunch after the project is completed. And she asks them about their experience with working with her firm, about the way the processes were, about their fees, about, just feedback. And she said she's actually made changes in her processes and the way she does things in her systems based on feedback from clients. So you're right. We most of us don't take the time to do that. And that's valuable to do. So, but anyway, okay. So what we're saying here is that Judith and Corey are giving to you their self-assessment evaluation, that when it is very detailed, it is several pages, it is a great gift that you guys are giving, because I know you didn't put it together in a minute and a half. So I'm thanking you on behalf of everybody. So truly. And what I want to suggest to everybody out there is that you take this self-assessment evaluation before we put the next show up. Not, the next Design Biz Live show up. I'm going to do it. And the reason I'm going to do it is because I'm going to put myself in the place of you guys and say, well, this is what I learned and what does this mean? And this is what happened and what would you suggest? And so if you do this evaluation before the next live episode, which will be in about 3 to 4 weeks, because we're trying to do these one Wednesday a month, then this might not be a show that you want to sit and run to or do laundry to. You might need to sit, but you could always replay it, whatever. Crazy.
I'll tell you what, Luann, I'm going to get my team to do it again.
Oh, that'd be interesting, right?
See
to
where
see
we're
the
at.
growth, right? To see the growth and to see the different things. And I also, before we leave, I want to just impress upon everybody what Judith did say also, is that the things that you will learn from the evaluation and the things that you will, find are your strengths and weaknesses are going to be different at different phases of your career. So for instance, a brand new designer might have a very low skill set at presenting the project or asking for the money on the project or something like that. But then at the same, and so that designer learns from that you need to work on that, because if you're new and something you're not good at, you're going to need to work on it pretty much no matter what it is. But like what Judith is saying is, after many years of being in business, she might evaluate herself differently that she did 15 or 20 years ago on what she likes to do. And the fact of the matter is at this stage of her career, if 3, 4, 5 parts of a project fall into that she doesn't like to do a column, it's not she has to learn how to do it. She doesn't want to do it anymore. She doesn't want to pick the carpet anymore. Like, sorry, lady, I'm not picking your carpet. Go to the carpet store. So the thing is that there is, and I think it's really cool that you're going to have your staff do it again too. It'd be interesting to see, what comes of that. But so this is a tough topic. And I have to say, I feel like we chipped away at it. We have a lot to go on flat fees versus hourly, on pricing your projects, but stick with us, because these two are the two to get us through it. And so what I'm going to tell you is that you would go to www.windowworks-nj.com/designbiz2. www.windowworks-nj.com/designbiz2. And that's where you can click on your download for this self-assessment. And we will, the next time, tech gods prevailing, we are going to try and do some screen shares where we've got the evaluation up in front of us and the graphs in front of us of maybe, Corey's assessment or my assessment or Judith's assessment. And so you might not want to be running or jogging when we do it, but we don't know if it'll be able to do it though either. So I'm not making any promises.
We can do it. We can do it.
Well,
we can do it.
Here's what I just need to recap here for a second. Corey put all of this information into an Excel file. Okay. I really get out your box of crayons.
I love it.
It works.
Okay.
Colors. It's all about the colors. Okay.
Okay, good. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to doing it because I think it is going to be interesting to see what I learn, and of course I'm doing it as an experiment so I have better information to ask questions, but it will be interesting to take it back to WindowWorks and see what I can apply there. Okay. So, all right, guys, I am just in love with both of you, madly, truly, deeply. I think you're the most amazing.
we miss you when you're gone.
I know. I miss you guys too. It's like, wait, we have to wait a month.
Thank you for the therapy session. Thank you.
All right, guys, have an excellent day.
Thanks, Luann.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me again today for another episode of A Well-Designed Business. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks in Livingston, New Jersey, your trade resource for custom window treatments and awnings. Learn more about WindowWorks at www.windowworks-nj.com. All of our music is original music by Room 2 Productions. Please contact us if you want to learn more about original music for your business or your events.